The Crooked Epic. 1. The Inn of Maniacal Madness. 3. Ted. The Lake. 3A. 1. Without their father, Ted had let the unpredictability of alien fears unhinge their feeling of security and safety, even on their property and in their home. Besides mentoring them on the natural strengths which they earned as they exercised their minds and bodies, Father also gave them essential tutorials on everything else which a young man might find helpful. Their father was gone in the late evening, but returned by early morning. Both boys felt the positivity of his presence during that early evening and, by bedtime, were exhausted. However, with their excitement of fresh fishing at Horace Lake and the prospects of adventure, life rejuvenated their souls. Both boys had each quietly procured a separate fishing magazine and studied the various stories and pictures until the estimated time of arrival. That Saturday morning, the brothers walked down to the front of the driveway where the Grants' parents pulled in with a red Ford up to the barn door behind their father's Franklin. The Grants all got out of their vehicle as the Goods' father walked down off the front stoop to greet them, and Alex and Ted waited for the boys to get out of the back doors. Ted's friend Benjamin and his older brother Gregory hopped out on either side. Gregory came around from the other side to take the 2 fishing poles out of the rear window area. On cue, Benjamin reached into the back seats and took a big tackle box off the floor. The Goods' father began talking to the 2 boys' parents in front of the picnic table. Alex walked into the tool shed where he took out both tackle boxes for each of the boys, 1 net, and 2 big creels which were shared. Ted picked up his fishing pole off the side of the barn and took his tackle box from Alex's hand. Mr. and Mrs. Grant and Christopher Good continued talking as Alex motioned the young Grants to follow them closer to the road near the pond. Briefly, Alex explained the directions to the lake as Gregory quickly inspected his knots and reel line. Benjamin started to push apart the grasses which surrounded the pond curiously, and his parents looked like they were getting ready to leave. "We should get to the crossroads before 11 at the latest, and Jacob will be there, or we'll just wait for him a minute. That's when he said he would be there." "Does your friend Jacob have his tackle?" asked Gregory. "Yes, he does. He's going to bring live bait, too. He told me he was out picking night crawlers yesterday and put them inside a tobacco tin with some fresh dirt and leaves, so they should be good still." "Good," agreed Greg, while Benjamin came walking back from the pond. The Goods' father and the Grants' parents were getting done exchanging their informal cordialities, and Arthur Grant looked over to his sons and Alex and Ted with a smile of pride. He walked down the driveway and stood in it while he addressed all of them. "Boys, stay together and be safe. We're a little uncomfortable letting Jacob go home by himself, but Mr. Goods said he lives much closer to the lake. So, do you boys have enough drinking water?" The Grant kids shook their heads, and Alex looked over at Ted anxiously while Gregory asked if he could borrow his father's canteen. Mr. Grant agreed and walked back to their car, retrieved the water canteen with carrying strap out of the driver's side door, and walked back to them down the narrow dirt driveway. Grinning again, playfully, he tossed it underhand to Gregory when he was within 15 feet, and Greg caught it with his right hand and slung the strap around his left shoulder. Mrs. Grant and the Goods' father both smiled. "Nice toss," Gregory said, and he turned around to face the rest of the boys as his father proudly went back up to the car, and Mr. and Mrs. Grant both climbed in on either side into the front seats. The 4 of them walked to the left side of the front gate and waited as the Grants' red Ford pulled down the driveway backward, and their father stood near the picnic table watching and waving as they reversed and took off to the east. Then they got their gear and walked out to the west. The crossroads, as Jacob referred to them, were about a mile to the northwest down the private road, which was used only by the 2 residencies to the east. They were both inhabited by much older folks, and Ted never became personally acquainted with them all that well. One was a younger man named Kai Green, who was still more senior than their father. He worked as a chef at a restaurant and lived alone in the cabin near the turnoff. The others were a much older retired couple, the Sanchez's, who lived between the goods and the road which led to Manchester. The crossroads were not an actual road crossing either. It was a fork, where two paths led to the lake and up through the woods to the road on which Jacob's family lived. Jacob's road was private and a little over a half-mile north through the woods. It was out of Jacob's way to come down the path because his road continued almost over to the lake, but he had planned with Alex the day before. Alex had spoken to him at length on the phone after he had returned from the hospital with his broken arm. Our father works in Manchester too, like your parents. He's a lawyer. He says he's seen your father before at the circuit courthouse. Our mother doesn't actually work. Gregory explained to Alex some of his family's business and personal life while Benjamin and Ted tagged along. They avoided the conversation of Alex's cast. Oh, our father doesn't work in Manchester all the time. He's usually in Concord. Alex pointed out some of the differences between the two families. Our father's a U.S. Marshal. Yeah, we're going to get a new Model A, our father says. Hey, it must be exciting to have a marshal job. Did your dad enlist or get drafted into the war? Has he ever busted any famous bootleggers? He was drafted when I was young. Alex glanced at Ted, and Ted stayed silent. How about your dad? He didn't have to. Not sure why. I'm going to enlist in the Army. Soon, I hope, after I finish secondary school next year. They marched down the dusty road further, shuffling their tackle boxes and fishing poles in their arms while the distractions and the natural beauty of wilderness during summer enveloped them. The woods were alive with finches and warblers flying across the road and entangling bush branches. Squirrels barked, busily chattered, and scampered along with the higher limbs of trees, and onto the ground crackled fallen pieces and pine cones, leaves and twigs. Every once in a while, a tree stump or log along the side of the road would spring to life with a startled chipmunk jumping around the hills of the forest floor to its hole. As they reached near the crossroads, Benjamin and Ted hung back a few yards, and Ted noticed a cardinal flying from bush to bush parallel to them in the woods before lifting high into the trees behind them. As they neared the meeting spot, the conversation changed from family stories to gossip about neighbors, school experiences, and long-term career goals. Beginning to tell Gregory about his own dreams of studying animals in distant countries, Ted asked Benjamin what he wanted to do when he grew up. He replied that he thought it might be interesting to become a doctor. Alex had nonchalantly asked why Benjamin figured he would want to be a doctor. Benjamin explained that his father had been a lawyer for some people who had gotten sick in London on vacation and had re-entered the United States. Their presentations were a dichotomy of their families. Well, if I were a real doctor, I would have made them stay in the London hospital until they were properly treated. Gregory interjected with seniority on the idea. Anyway, our father wasn't their lawyer. He was the lawyer for the company the man had worked for. His family wasn't working, and he shouldn't have been allowed to bring the whole bunch of them back here. Mistakes in medical fields are one of the leading causes of deaths. As they approached the meeting spot, the discussion had continued, and Alex was listening intently. Ted bent back over to retie his shoelaces, pausing meditatively. Ted remembered that they should slow down and wait at the crossroads. Jacob wasn't there, and Greg had started to continue into the path. Still, when Alex saw Ted hesitantly look up toward Jacob's house, he turned around and put his tackle box down somewhat dramatically. Ted suddenly felt an ominous presence in the woods. He could not explain it, nor voice his feeling, but somewhere, something felt like it was watching the group of youngsters. He was reminded briefly of the runaway man on the hill. Yeah, but if America had more doctors who knew the correct procedures, they would have been able to come back to the United States and receive the medical care they needed in better facilities. Alex was quick to defend Benjamin, partly because Benjamin was Ted's friend and wanted to exhibit his versatility with comprehensive thinking and problem-solving for Gregory. He was not always as creative, but he would sometimes let the flair for intelligence show, especially when it came to matters which involved Ted. He was often the one to stick up for the underdog because he knew how it gained allies and friends in the long term. Alex paused. "Hey guys, look. Teddy, Benjamin, a frog." While they were all locked in the heated discussion about scientific theologies, Benjamin tripped backward, shrieking in surprise as his tackle box fell out of his hand and his fishing pole flew to the side. Ted's hand reached back and grabbed empty air while he was hesitating his forward trod. Benjamin's legs leaned against Ted's upper body forward in a balancing act with Ted's pole backward behind him, and the tackle box in his extended left arm jiggled to the side. Without any indication of what was going on, Ted felt Benjamin's shoulder crash into his knees sideways, while he heard Alex start to laugh hysterically. Finally, Ted looked up and saw a look of dumbfounded shock in Gregory's eye, and Alex covering his mouth while the wily prankster, Jacob, who had jumped from the bush, knelt to give Benjamin a hand back up to his feet. Ted tried to brush off his discomfort and brief fright, besides the still present ominous feeling in the woods.